Probably should have finished eating before I hit record, hey? Seems like the kind of thing a professional would do. Am I a professional? Am I a professional YouTuber? Is that a thing? I can't imagine that. Man, 12-year-old me would be so excited if he knew what YouTube was. Did I just date myself? I'm sorry. AOS for endless spells and faction terrain. This one I think is going to be more interesting from a Greenskins perspective, so let's check it out. Thanks to my Killboss patron Panda, Wybarian makes good art, Instagram below. Buy some dice from Baron of Dice, use code MDG, support the channel. Why not? Okay, summoning manifestation. So of course these are quotes taken directly from the Warhammer community website. You should go check them out every day. There's lots of information that I don't include in this, so be sure to go check out their website. Yeah, do that. Quote, manifestations have now been grouped into thematic lores, and you will be able to pick one of these lores alongside your spell lore and prayer lore when building your army roster. Each manifestation lore provides spells and prayers which allow you to summon the manifestations in that lore. Cool. I like it. One thing about this that I'm a little bit confused on, it says you will be able to pick one of these lores alongside your spell lore and prayer lore. So to me, the way that I read that is that when you're picking enhancements for your army, you're going to pick a spell lore and a manifestation lore. If that's true, then there's going to be a lot of endless spells running around the table all the time. And I think I like that. I think that's good. I think from a Games Workshop perspective, they want to sell these models. So that's probably what they're doing. They're like, hey, what if we had models that we could just sell to every army? It's like, okay, like I have a feeling that might be how this is reading. If I'm incorrect here, then it might be where you can pick a manifestation lore as one of the lores, right? So it's like, well, I could pick Lore of the Swamp, or I could pick this this manifestation lore, one or the other, not both. But picking it alongside to me means in addition. So we'll have to wait and see. Regardless, I think that because you're not picking points for these endless spells, and I think because Games Workshop is going to be incentivized to actually sell endless spells, I think we're going to see a lot of endless spells running around in 4th edition. And to me, I think that's cool. I like endless spells. Quote, factions which have their own unique manifestation lores can choose to pick that lore for their army. Alternatively, any army, even those with a unique manifestation lore, can pick one of the following universal manifestation lores. So if your Gloomspite Gits, there's going to be a Gits manifestation lore that has the mushroom, the moon, and the spiders as it, and you can pick that lore. As a Gloomspite Gits army, you'll have the option to choose that lore, or you could choose one of the other lores. So that's going to be a really interesting balance question, because if you make the faction lores really good, then people aren't going to pick the generic ones, and if you make the generic ones really good, people aren't going to pick the faction ones. And just like everything else in this game, it's like there's going to be a best one. There's going to be a best one. And if it's a universal one, we'll see the same endless spells running around all the time. And if the best one is your army one, then we'll see that one picked all the time. So I'm curious to see how this actually shakes out in terms of variety. Like, what are people actually picking? But we'll talk about them a little bit more because, bam, here they are. So here's a few of them. I have all of them, but let's have a look at them here. So we have the Morbid Conjuration. Purple Sun, right, which is a big debuff, some damage. Suffocating Gravetide, Horde Buster, Malevolent Maelstrom, like a Caster Bomb, and Soul Snare Shackles, a slow debuff. Again, we don't know what these War Scrolls are going to be. We can sort of safely assume that they're going to roughly be what they are now, but they very well could be functionally different than as they are here. So it's hard to say which of these endless spells is actually going to be really strong. But in this first one, Morbid Conjuration, it is a little bit of utility with Purple Sun and Shackles, and then a little bit of damage, depending, Horde Buster damage. So if you pick this spell lore, to me, it's a really cool idea that 3 different casters can cast 3 different endless spells. And that's really cool, right? Forbidden Power. So here we have a lot of mobility with Soul Scream Bridge and Lauchon the Soul Seeker. And then we also have Horrorghast and Shards of Valagar. So again, it's like, if your army, if you want to have a lot of mobility in your army, but your army doesn't have that mobility, it's like, well, you can go with this Forbidden Lore, Manifestation Lore, Forbidden Power Manifestation Lore. And suddenly it's like, it's a tool that lots of armies can use without having to spend points, especially if it's in addition to your regular spell lore, right? It's like, you're going to see a lot of Soul Scream Bridges, right? You're going to see a lot of them. If people can take them for free, you're going to see a lot of them. And I don't really know how I feel like about it. Like, I like endless spells, but I would like it if I saw a lot of different endless spells and not just like, well, everyone runs Soul Scream Bridge, right? Like, in my opinion, things like Soul Scream Bridge, because they're teleporting, and teleporting in this game is really, really strong, right? Movement is really, really strong, and moving things like, it's like, oh, hey, I have a reinforced unit of Iron Jaws or Brutes, and I'm going to teleport them all the way across the map into a really annoying position for you. It's like, well, we're doing that every time, right? We're doing that every time. Movements, fast teleports, flying. Very good. So Soul Scream Bridge, if we all get to pick a manifestation lore in addition to our spell lore, and it's like, we're going to see a lot of Soul Scream Bridges, right? So, I don't know. I reserve the right to play it and to feel it out. So, we'll see. Twilit Sorceries. So here we have an Umbral Spell Portal, Geminids, and Prismatic Palisades. We actually get a War Scroll for Prismatic Palisades. So that's pretty cool. And then Primal Energy, Burning Head, Gnashing Jaws, and Life Swarm. So again, it's just really cool to me that it's like, well, let's say I'm playing Iron Jaws. Well, and I have a Maw Crusher. Well, I can throw out Gnashing Jaws. That's cool. And then something else can throw out Burning Head. That's cool. But then I can also cast Life Swarm in the back and start healing up my Mega Boss. Like, that's awesome. It's so many different options, right? They're going to be interesting to balance too, because, you know, it's not just like, obviously the best endless spell in a lore matters a lot. Like, which one's the best one is going to set the tone for whether or not people want to take it. But the internal balance within a lore about if like different ones are actually good and strong will also change people's willingness to take those lores. And you'll also notice here, both of these only have 3 endless spells, while these ones have 4 endless spells. So it's like this whole new design space of how to balance the endless spells, and you could even have endless spells that interact with each other within a manifestation lore. So it's like, cool, there's 4 endless spells, and if there's 1 of them, you do this. If there's 2 of them, you do that. If there's 3 of them, you do this. Or if this one and that one are on the battlefield and wholly within 12 of each other, they get this added bonus. Like, there's so many interesting things that are being opened up here, and that's why I'm excited. I'm a little bit not pessimistic. I'm a little bit cautious, because we'll see how it actually plays out in terms of balance. Cool, and then here's a couple more. Aether Wrought Machineries, so Quicksilver Swords, Pendulums, just some damage, and Cogs. That's awesome. And then I have no idea what to make of this one. Universal Manifestation Lore, the Kronspine Incarnate. Again, like, Kronspine's free? You just get to take it? Do you get to take it in addition to your spell lore? If so, it can't be good. You can't make this Kronspine good. If this Kronspine is good, every army takes it. That's not good. That's boring. We've seen that in the meta before. Luckily, in my local area, everybody was pretty turned off by it, I feel. So I have never seen a Kronspine on the table, thank goodness. But let me know in the comments below your horror stories about going to tournaments and just seeing like lots and lots of Kronspines. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. We'll see. I was expecting more incarnates in 4th, so you can't have units that are really powerful that any army can take, because if they're really strong, everybody takes them, and if they're really weak, nobody takes them. It's hard to find a balance. So here's a War Scroll for Quicksilver Swords. So it's a War Scroll, right? It's a straight up War Scroll. I'm just gonna get rid of this here, and let's look at its parts. So move of 8 inches, 5 up save, 6 health, and a 7 up banishment. So that's its casting like value, right? So the way that it works right now is that if I try to dispel an endless spell and I roll greater than the casting value, it's gone. But it looks here like maybe the casting value and the banishment value will be different, which to me is an interesting idea from a design perspective, because you could have a low casting value but a high banish value, and the endless spell could like do very little, but it's hard to get off the table. So it's like or maybe it'll power up over time or something, right? So I feel like in 4th edition, what they're really doing a good job of so far is they're opening up areas for more design in the future, which is cool. Okay, so there's a passive here, Dancing Blades. Word rolls cannot be made for damage points inflicted by this manifestation's attacks. So cool. It's like we're turning it into a toolbox here, right? So it's like Aether Void, Pendulum, Quicksilver Swords, and Chromatic Cogs. Maybe Pendulum does more damage, but you can't ward save Quicksilver Swords. So it's like suddenly you have this little toolbox. You're like, well, I'm going to throw out Quicksilver Swords because I know that you have a 5-up ward. It's like, that's cool. 12 attacks, 3s to hit, 3s to wound, 1 rend, 1 damage with crit mortals. Sure, lots of dice. And also for keywords it has manifestation. So I'm sure that the incarnations will also have this manifestation keyword. So it'll be like manifestation, comma, incantation, comma, right? And then it has flying and ward 6. So it's cool to me that they actually put these fly and ward as keywords, right? It's almost like they're not abilities. They just have this keyword, and then the ability is defined somewhere in the book. So that's interesting. I like that. So here's more quotes from the Warhammer community website. Quote, "The first thing you'll notice is that manifestation lures resemble regular unit war scrolls far more than ever before. They can move, charge, attack, take damage, and use abilities in much the same manner as units. So if you can't banish those Quicksilver Swords, you can send a monster to bat them down or a unit to shoot them from a safe distance. Although, of course, they can just get resummoned. So, interesting opportunity cost there. Though similar to units, manifestations aren't exactly going to listen to commands from a nearby hero, and their shimmering magical nature leads to some key rule differences. Additionally, some manifestations, such as the Prismatic Palisade, have a move characteristic of blank, and so don't threaten the movement of enemy units around them. So you can attack endless spells, you can shoot endless spells. More ways to get rid of them than ever before. This is really good because, if you remember, they got rid of heroic actions, so they got rid of heroic willpower, which means that if you don't have a wizard, you can still get rid of endless spells. Also, if you're looking at your list and you're like, well, I don't want to sacrifice any of my casting here, then you can make a decision to either fight it off or shoot it off the table. So more options. That's more skill expression, more decisions that you have to make. I like it. So here are some rules that apply to all manifestations. Models can move through manifestations, but can't end a move on them. That's just like they are now. Units can finish a charge move within half an inch of them, and they can also be picked as the target of enemy abilities like shoot or fight. So you can charge at endless spells, and you can shoot them and fight them. That's interesting and cool. To me, one thought I had here that was kind of interesting is that because you can move through them, when you charge at an endless spell, you can end your charge on the other side of that endless spell. So let's say that you move up to outside of 3 and you roll a 12-inch charge, you could theoretically move like quite a large brick of models to the other side of the endless spell to charge, right? And then you can pile in away from the endless spell towards the units that are behind it. You just have to make sure that you're not leaving combat with the endless spell. So this is going to be a little bit of some tricky maneuvering where, you know, like right now, for example, you can take your endless spell and just plant it right in front of your army, and it creates like a buffer zone where your opponent can't really end their turn, and you can do that now, right? In 4th, you can still do that, but it means that your opponent can measure the charge distance to the endless spell, and they can charge around the endless spell or through the endless spell. So it's going to be a little bit more interesting in terms of like where you're positioning them on the table and how you're moving them around the battlefield. And so it's quite interesting. I like it. And remember, they also can't receive commands, which is good. It's just a balance thing. It's like, well, you can't give them commands, so it means that there's no book commands, right? They can't have mighty destroyers, and it's just a balancing thing, right? It's like we're gonna not allow these two things to interact with each other, so that we can develop them independently without worrying about, whatever. They can be damaged or destroyed, but don't count as destroyed units for battle tactics or abilities, right? So you can like throw an endless spell out and it can die, and you're not worried about it affecting scoring, right? Like it's not going to feed corn, right? Endless spells dying doesn't feed corn, which is good. So they can only use core abilities or abilities on their war scroll. They can't use commands or be affected by friendly abilities unless they specifically affect manifestations. So core abilities are like fight, move, run, charge, things like that, right? So they can do all those things like regular units, and they cannot contest or control objectives. Good. They don't have a control value. They cannot control or contest objectives. That's good. And then they break it down further into two different kinds of manifestations: moving manifestations, or as we know them now as predatory endless spells, and static manifestations, so non-predatory endless spells. So moving manifestations, you'll typically need to set up 9 inches away from them and will need to retreat or move out of combat. You need to typically set up more than 9 inches away from them. That means if you throw an endless spell off on the flank and you just let it float out there, you're extending that range that your enemies are gonna deep strike in, teleport in, and such. You're pushing them back. You're creating a buffer zone from teleports and deep strikes and recursion with endless spells. That's really cool. I like that. I like the idea that you can put an endless spell behind you, and if your opponent doesn't get rid of it, it's going to zone out your backline. That's cool. Imagine putting Life Swarm behind you. Moving forward, it's more than 30 away from your opponent's casters. They can't shoot it, they can't fight it, and it's going to zone out your backline. I was mentioning before how there's a lot more decisions to make with these endless spells. Here's another one. Love it. Great. Typically cannot be set up within 9 inches of enemy units when summoned, and can't move in the movement phase after being set up. So you can't cast Gnashing Jaws and then it moves and hurts you. You can't do that. You have to set it up more outside of 9, and it can't move in the movement phase after being set up. So, again, we'll see how strong these things actually play out, because if I summon it while I cast it, my opponent attempts to unbind it, and then it hits the table, and it's not going to do anything. And then on my opponent's turn, they have another chance to get rid of it. And if they don't get rid of it, then on my next turn, it'll do something. So, right away, it's seems bad, right? It's well, I have to cast it, and then you have to fail your unbind, and you have to fail your dispel. You have to fail both for me to do a thing with it. So Mystic Shield is better, right? Arcane Bolt's maybe better. So we'll have to see how these things actually play out, because again, we have incomplete information. So static manifestations, so these are manifestations that don't move. You can ignore them when setting up units, and you can end a move within 3 inches of them, and you can freely move away from them. So they're not like units that you fight with. They're more like terrain. Cannot use any abilities that involve moving. They can't run, charge, retreat. Typically have more freedom to place them when summoned, so they can be closer to your opponents, right? And which means they can probably do their thing. They can probably use their ability immediately. So maybe static manifestations are going to be when you cast them, they're more likely to do their thing now, but then they're stuck where they are. And then the moving manifestations are going to be well, they don't get to do anything until your next turn, but when they do, it'll be scary. We'll have to wait and see. So here's another example. Didn't we look at this one already? Didn't we look at Quicksilver Swords already? We did. Then why is it here twice? Did I make a mistake? No, I would never make a mistake. Right, so this is Prismatic Palisade. That's what this war scroll is. So the keywords, it has manifestation, endless spell, and a ward 6+. I guess they might all have wards. I don't know, we'll see. Okay, so save is a 4-up, 7-up banishment, 8 health, and 0 move. 8 health, 4-up save. Suddenly we're evaluating these things how difficult are they going to be to remove. if I could take a unit of Snarlfang Riders with their piddly little Grubbos and remove an Endless spell, probably not a very good Endless spell, right? If it's like, oh, it's a 5-up save with 2 health, it's like, well, it's garbage, right? Because I can throw something at it that's bad and remove it. So, passive, Blinding Light, effect. This manifestation cannot be targeted by shooting attacks. Cool. So you can't shoot it off the table. In addition, a unit cannot be targeted by shooting attacks if it is impossible to draw a straight line from a model in the attacking unit to a model in the target unit without the line passing across this manifestation. So you can't shoot at it and you can't shoot past it. Cool. Serves its function. And hopefully, but you can deep strike, right, beside it. So, I mean, we'll see. I'm very interested in learning more about this and how they actually work. Moving on. Faction terrain features. The same logic that applies to manifestation also extends to faction terrain features. Like manifestations, these terrain features also have a health and a save and can be targeted by enemy attacks, such as a well-aimed cannonball to demolish them. So, I know a lot of people are going to read this and they're going to not like it because they play Gloomspite Gits and they have a Loon Shrine, and the idea that you can shoot a Loon Shrine off the table makes them sad because they've sort of got used to zoning out the Loon Shrine and making sure it stays, and then recurring things out of the Loon Shrine with like King's Gits and the Clammy Hand, for example. But it looks like that's changing. It looks like that's changing, and I think it's okay. I think it's probably good for the game. It means that because do you know what's a worse feeling? When you don't have a monster, and so you can't break faction terrain. It's just impossible. You're like, there's nothing I can do about that piece of faction terrain. It's going to stay there the whole game. That's a bad feeling. If your opponent puts something on the table, like faction terrain, endless spells, invocations, you should be able to interact with them and deal with them. That's good game design. Have you ever played a game? I remember playing a game against Fire Slayers when I was first starting out. This is probably a year ago, because I remember it was at a doubles tournament. So there's a doubles tournament coming up this weekend. So it was a year ago. And my opponent put a Fire Slayers incantation, whatever, in front of me. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, how do I, get rid of it? And they're like, oh, you just can't. Do you have any priests? No? Well, then you can't. And I thought to myself, that's really stupid. That's really stupid. Or I've been playing Sylvaneth lately. Sorry, Greenskins fans. Don't worry, I'm not going to talk about them on the channel. Don't worry. But you put these trees down, and then there's nothing your opponent can do about them. Well, they should be able to do something about them, because I can fill the battlefield with them. So there should be a way to get rid of them, right? And not just turn off the rules, but actually get them out of the way. So, we'll see. If a Loon Shrine takes a lot of damage, do you remove it from the table? Or do you just turn the rules off of the War Scroll? Do you replace it with something? I don't know. So many questions. So here is a Fire Slayer faction terrain War Scroll. It's not really a War Scroll. It's sort of like a rules. So let's look at it. 3-up save, 8 health, no move, and no control. Right, that's fine. Keywords, faction terrain, board 6-up, order Fire Slayers. Cool. Start of any turn. Molten Blessing. Declare. Pick a friendly Fire Slayer's priest within this terrain. Features combat range to the target. So within 3. Effect. Add 1 to chanting rolls for the target for the rest of the turn. In addition, the target can use the Unbind ability this turn as if it has Wizard 1. So that's cool. Right? At the start of any turn. So every turn you're like, I picked this guy. And then he can Unbind. And +1 chanting rolls. So maybe you can spend a command point to chant on your opponent's turn. I like it. Sure. Once per battle, army your hero phase. Spending the Forge. Declare. Pick a friendly Fire Slayer's priest within this terrain. Features combat range to extend the power of the Forge. Effect. Heal D3 for each friendly Fire Slayer's unit on the battlefield. Once this ability has been used, the terrain feature cannot use the Molten Blessing ability for the rest of the battle. So it's like you can give +1 to chanting rolls and it gets Wizard 1, or you can heal D3 to everything on the battlefield. Cool. And you can blow it up, right? You can fight it. A 3-up save with 8 health is like foot hero level of toughness, right? So it's like, if they, I mean, they've also said that they're gonna reduce shooting ranges in AOS 4. Not that we've seen any evidence of that, but they have stated that. So we'll see how true that is, but that'll make this harder to get on top of, right? But fascinating. Can endless spells kill each other? Can endless spells kill each other? Why not? Seriously though, why not? Why can't a dancing blade run up and hit another dancing blade and remove it from the battlefield? Like, endless spell fight. Can't wait. Can't wait to kill my opponent's endless spells with my own endless spells. Wah. Faction Train. Like static manifestations, Faction Train features don't threaten units around them, so you can freely move up to and away from them, unless they have a hero placed on them, for example in the case of a Skull Altar. Some rare Faction Train features can even move and fight. We're gonna get a Faction Train piece that's gonna move around the battlefield and fight. Mark my words, all my friendly orcs out there. We are absolute. I hope your Rogue Idol models are ready. I hope they're ready, man, because I have a feeling we're gonna get a new Rogue Idol sculpt, and it's gonna be a piece of Faction Train. Because what army besides Greenskins would be more perfect to have a Faction Train piece that literally gets up, walks towards you, and punches you? Honestly. Oh, so excited. Okay, sorry. Very excited. Very exciting. I have a Rogue Idol. Do you have a Rogue Idol? I hope I can use my Rogue Idol. That'd be sick. Of course, Faction Train is... They're definitely going to make it... Oh my god. They better make it a Rogue Idol. They better make it a Rogue Idol. Of course, Faction Train is particularly important for some factions, such as the Sylvaneth. These factions now have the ability to summon additional train features through the battle, such as the Sylvaneth's unlimited spell, Tree Song. Lower the Deepwood Tree Song in your hero phase, casting value of 6. Declare, pick a friendly Sylvaneth wizard to cast a spell to make a casting roll of 2d6. Effect, if there are fewer than 3 friendly awakened wildwoods on the battlefield, you can set up an awakened wildwood wholly within 18 inches of the caster and more than 3 inches from all enemy units, objectives, and other train features. If there are already 3 awakened wildwoods on the battlefield, heal 3 for each friendly awakened wildwood. It's funny here how they give us this, but they don't tell us what the war scroll of it is, right? So it just means that Sylvaneth, that you can cast the spell. Every wizard can cast it once, so you could like get a lot of trees out quickly and then heal them, but your opponent's able to get rid of them off the table. And again, I'm not sure if it means that you actually remove the model from the table or if it just means that you get to turn off the rules. I have a feeling it's going to be remove it from the table, but we'll have to wait and see. Very curious to know. If you kill a Loon Shrine, do you pick up the Loon Shrine? Let me know what you think in the comments. Faction Terrain. All in all, manifestations and Faction Terrain features are now much more integrated into the core game mechanics and are involved in nearly every phase of the game. Good. You also have more counterplay than ever to deal with these threats, instead of being restricted to just banishing them with your wizards or priests. Yeah, I mean, it's good. Like, I like this. I like these changes. We'll see how they actually come out in practice and how the balance is and all that, but so far, just the way that it's looking right now, I like it. I'm a big fan. Like, subscribe. Wah.